It's time again for another episode of Deacon Speakin', so that must mean that I am Deacon Tom Scarlett, and that you are in the right place, my friend, because I am your Deacon Speakin'. I am the Speakin' Deacon. Today's podcast comes from a homily that I gave on the feast day of the Holy Family back on December 29th in 2024. Now, I have the pleasure of serving two churches in our parish community, St. Vincent de Paul in Bedford and St. Mary of the Assumption in Mitchell. They're both so very beautiful churches, and a wonderful carving of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph hangs on the wall above the main entrance of St. Mary's and looking lovingly down on the congregation gathered there in the pews. Now, every year on the feast day of the Holy Family of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I'm immediately drawn to and reminded of those sculpted figures over the entrance doors of St. Mary's. Now, from the perspective of we servers at the altar during St. Mary's Mass, we're easily reminded of the Holy Family by simply raising our eyes to see the highest sculpture standing over the congregation as a loving family cares for and watches over its own. With the congregation's eyes, ears, and hearts fixed on the altar and Christ's sacrifice at the Mass, the Holy Family watches over the congregation from the back of the church and from the backs of the parishioners. And that really is what families do and have done, I suppose, since the beginning of time. They take care of and love each other, even when you may not know that they're there, when they're not in your line of sight, when they're behind you. It's an unconditional love that families give. I was reminded in a very wonderful homily from our good priest, Father Jagan, that he delivered on Saint Therese. She's referred to as the little flower. Now, it's said that Therese often used flowers and roses as metaphors, either to refer to herself or to the acts of love that she wanted to do. She referred to herself as the little flower of Jesus in the garden of God. And she often referred to roses as a metaphor for the acts of love she tried to accomplish for God. Now, novices of the convent reported that Therese said, quote, "After my death, I will let fall a shower of roses," end quote, with roses being the symbols of the graces and blessings that she would be able to send to earth when she would be in heaven. Now, the reason that St. Therese came to mind when thinking of families is that people, good people, who work in service to God, whether as a sacristan, an extraordinary minister, a bulletin editor, collection counter, choir member, any number of acts that we contribute out of love for God and His church are sowing seeds. It is planting the little flowers that bloom and beautify and glorify God by simply being what God created them to be. These seeds that you plant and tend and care to one day turn into something much bigger and that look much different than what you began with. Maybe even bigger, better, and more fragrant than you even expected. Families plant the little seeds and grow the little flowers that glorify God's garden. I go back to the statue of the Holy Family looking down over the garden. Have you ever watched a time lapse of flowers throughout the course of a sunny day? The flowers turn and raise their head, and they open their petals to follow the sun as it crosses the sky. And that seems rather appropriate and poetic, that the congregational garden during the Mass faces the Son of God, turning and raising our heads as He passes and dwells among us. Now, there was a new year upon us, and I guess it's always a good time to recognize new challenges and new opportunities. Resolutions for the new year seems to be a tired word which can be jokingly translated as over before it starts sometimes. If you can make and keep resolutions, you are doing well, because I am a failure. At least for 10 months of the year, I'm a failure. For a few months, I seem to give it a good go. But this year, maybe we try something different. Maybe this year we commit to planting flowers. Maybe this year, instead of resolving to be better or different, we commit to being more. We are all truly very much more than what we appear or what we may believe. I would suggest that this commitment begin with the conversation with God. And if you don't know how to start that conversation, it's as simple as this. Just find a quiet minute and say, "Here I am, Lord," and then listen. Your moment can begin in many places, but I do recommend finding time with Jesus or time to visit Jesus in adoration. If you don't know what that is or how to do adoration, or are even afraid to ask, reach out to your priest or your deacon or someone you know who's already doing adoration and simply ask. I assure you they will be more than happy to help you. You can also simply take a minute out of your day, every day, and pause and say, "Here I am, Lord," and then watch how He will start working in your life. And when He starts, and He will start, open yourself to His call into the seeds that He gives you to plant. This is all family work in a family garden, planting little flowers that will one day bloom to please the Lord. Hey, you bunch of good gardeners of God, get out there and start planting the seeds of God's work, and then watch what happens. We can all do it together. I'm Deacon Tom Scarlett, and this is the Deacon Speaking Podcast. Be good to yourself and be good to each other. Love yourself, love each other, and I'll see you right back here next week.